ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ. Sangat ji, today we're going to talk about a topic that plays on the mind of many people, whether that be somebody that is religious, non-religious, claims that they believe in God, doesn't believe in God. Sangat ji, many people that we hear talking about guilt, feeling guilty. And there's two different reasons for why somebody feels guilt. And one of those reasons is when somebody makes a promise that they are going to do something. When somebody commits to something and they're not able to carry out that commitment, they're not actually able to do what they said they would do. They're not able to fulfill that promise that they made, and that promise could be towards Guru Sahib Ji, that promise could be towards people around them, to a Mahapurkh, to a Sant, to a Gurmukh, to somebody in the Sangat. Sangat Ji, that's one reason why somebody feels guilty. Another reason why somebody might feel guilty is if they feel that they've made a mistake, or if somebody has made a mistake. Somebody's made a mistake and then they feel guilty, and then that question often arises that will I even be forgiven for my mistake, what I've done? Or if I said that I will carry out this task, if I've made this commitment, and that commitment could be taking Amrit and making certain promises when we've received the Amrit, and then not being able to carry out and fulfill everything, and then there's that guilt of not being able to carry out and live up to that commitment. Sangat Ji, this happens to so many of us. So let's look at what Guru Granth Sahib Ji say. Somebody very recently asked me this question, and it was a dear sister, a Gursikh Ban from Canada, that asked me this question, saying, does Guru Sahib Ji, in the Bani of Guru Granth Sahib Ji, does Guru Granth Sahib Ji Pacha Ji mention anything about guilt? Sangat Ji, when we actually look at, and if somebody's to go into a search and type in guilt, no, we won't find any direct translations for anything to come up with guilt. Sangat Ji, what is guilt? Let's look at that first. Guilt, Sangat Ji, is actually a negative emotion. So should we feel guilty? And if we look at that question, and if we was to just answer that in one word, should we feel guilty? The answer is actually no. And I know that a lot of people might be thinking, because I've had this question, this counteraction question comes from this. The moment we say, well, no, we shouldn't. So then the next question comes is, for example, a lot of Gursikhs get into this guilt of when they miss getting up Amrit Vele. So when they're not able to rise early in the morning to sit down and focus and read Guru Sahib Ji's Bani, and they say, well, of course we should feel guilty, because if we don't feel guilty, how are we ever meant to try and rectify missing that and not fulfilling our promise? Sangat Ji, we've got to be very clear on one thing in understanding what guilt is. This guilt is when we feel bad about ourselves. And in guilt, it's a negative emotion where we'll start to beat ourselves up. And what happens is, when we start to say to ourselves, no, you're no good, and you're really bad, you're going to get punished for this, that your Guru is going to be so displeased with you, Guru is going to be angry with you, and we start to torment ourselves. And what we've got to remember is, when we start to do that, if we start to do that on a regular basis, if we keep doing that to ourselves, what we're doing is we're firing certain neurons again and again in our brain. So then we start to create this negative pattern inside of us. So eventually what will happen is we'll start doing that to ourselves so much it becomes a habit where we're constantly beating ourselves up. And Sangat Ji, somebody gave me this amazing example one day. This Gursikh Pyara, this Guru Dalal, he said to me, he said, Guru Granth Sahib Ji Pacha Ji talk about the example of an elephant that is guided by the rain. Sadhguru Ji Pacha Ji talk about this in Gurbani to us as well. They say that Hasti sir jo ankas hai, ahran jo sir de, mantan aage rakh ke ubi sev kare. Sadhguru Ji Pacha say that Hasti sir jo ankas hai, just like the elephant has that rein above its head. That rein for an elephant is a stick, and that stick is used to hit the elephant on the head so that the elephant can be guided. And Sangat Ji, this example is given to us by Tan Sri Guru Amar Das Ji Sache Pacha Ji. But the example is when that rein for us is our Guru's teachings. And our Guru reins us in and makes sure that we're going on the right path. But Sangat Ji, imagine, so what we're going to do now is we're going to take that example for us when we're actually teaching ourselves something. When we've missed something, we've not done something, we feel like we've made a mistake, and then what we start to do is we start to beat ourselves with it. But think about it. The whole point of that rein, Sangat Ji, is why? It's so it can guide the elephant and not going off track. Because the elephant starts to go off track, and that's why it needs reining to bring it back on track. Or it's still on track, but then it needs to be guided a certain direction. So it's for two things. So one, when it's going off track. So sometimes when we go off track, what we do to ourselves is we feel so guilty that we didn't do that or we missed something. We start to not rein ourselves in. We get that rein and we beat ourselves so much. So imagine now that the elephant was beat so bad that the elephant actually just completely flat fell in its face and it isn't able to get up again. And imagine if that elephant is not able to rise again, is not able to walk again, what's the point of hitting it? The whole point of hitting that elephant was so it goes the right direction, not that we hit it so much that it falls on the floor and it's not able to get back up. So Sangat Ji, in the same way, when we start to feel guilt, it's the same thing as we're hitting ourselves so much that we feel so low about ourselves that it's actually like it's crushing us, and we start to fall onto that ground and we start to feel that I'm no good for nothing. And what happens is that doesn't leave us with enough energy to actually put something into action, to put something into place, to actually better ourselves. So Sangat Ji, what does Guru Sahib Ji say to us? If guilt is definitely a negative emotion, when we're feeling bad about not doing something, not fulfilling a commitment that we have made, a mistake that we have made, and we can look at what those mistakes are as well in a minute. Sadhguru Ji doesn't mention anywhere, they do not mention guilt, but what they do mention is, they mention something called self-reflection. This is very important. And how often should we do this? Again, Mahapurukhs and Guru Sikhs say after Rehra Sahib, every evening we should sit and reflect on our actions for that day, of what we've said, what we've spoke, everything that we've done in that day, we should reflect upon it. Let's listen to what Guru Granth Sahib Ji say. Guru Granth Sahib Ji says, Nanak parkhe aap ko. This is what we should do, is we should actually park ourselves. Park literally translates to judge, but we can translate it to self-reflection. So what Guru Sahib Ji is saying here is, often what we're used to doing is judging others. It's very easy to do. And this is constantly looking at what other people are doing and the mistakes they are making and what they should be doing. But Sangat Ji, today this is all about us. And this is about looking inside and thinking, Nanak parkhe aapko, okay, I have made this mistake. Let's look at a mistake and let's look at a promise that we have made. To be honest, they both will intertwine and they both work together. The commitment could be that I've said when I've gone to my Guru and taken Khande Bate da Amrit, for example, it might not be that. So everybody sets their own rules for their lives to say, I will not pass that line. And when you pass that line of your own self-discipline, what you want to be living by, then we feel guilty as well. Or something our parents, they don't expect us to do, then we do that, and then there's that guilt as well. So for example, Sadhguru Ji Pacha Ji, they say to us, they say that Dekh paraiyan changiyan maawan bhainan dhiyan jaane. They say, look at all other, this Dekh paraiyan, others, all others that are not your wife or not your husband, both ways. So it could be, so for somebody, and that, for example, is somebody that is married and isn't their own partner that they are married to, or somebody that is unmarried. So for them, that would be, they don't look at anyone because they're not married yet. So they can, and how do you then look at others, paraiyan, that aren't your own wife? This is dekh paraiyan changiyan. Changiyan, you look at them with a good, decent eye, changiyan. Dekh paraiyan changiyan maawan, how do you look at those that are older than you as your mothers? Maawan bhainan, those that are of the same age as you look at them as sisters. Maawan bhainan dhiyan, and those that are younger than you look at them as somebody, you look at them to be like your daughters. And obviously for my sisters, you can just convert that to brothers, fathers and sons. So that is the upadesh, for example, now. So that's a promise I'm making, that this is how I'm going to look at all others than anyone other than my own, even than my own, my wife, my sister, my mother, my daughter, everyone else I'm going to look at in that way as well. I'm going to look at them only as a mother, as a daughter, as a sister. So, but then what happens is we might make that mistake where we let the barrier down, and we cross that line which we call dharam. So when we're living by that, we're in dharam, we cross that line, we go outside of dharam, and then we just let the mind slip and we start to, look at somebody in that way. For example, we start looking at them and we start looking at their beauty and start having certain thoughts about that person. And that could even go further, where once it's come into the mind, the man, we've let the mind slip, we've let that go, we've let it loose, let it have thoughts about that person, about their body, about their looks, and mind start wondering what type of maybe intimate relationship we want to have with them. And if we let the mind keep doing that, it will come onto our tongue, man bach, then we might start speaking that way. We might start flirting with that person. We go past that line as well. And then Sangatji, and then it could turn into action as well. We actually physically act on those thoughts and those words that we've been saying. So then we've committed that mistake. And Sangatji, and then do we just sit there and then do we feel guilty? Oh my God, I'm going to kill myself. It's so bad what I've done. No, Sangatji, Guru Sahib Ji saying it's time now to reflect. Nanak parkhe aapko. Look at yourself from inside. Nanak parkhe aapko ta park jaan. Sadhguru Ji says, then you will be known as a true judge if you start judging yourself. So it's self-reflection. Okay, this has happened. How has this happened? How did I let myself get to that? Have I been going through a difficult time? Has there been a challenging time in my life? Why have I let my emotions, have I been feeling emotional lately because of a challenging time that is going on? So then some of these disciplines that I live by, have I started to let them slip? And then we reflect on that, we go through it, start to look at, become more conscious how this has happened, and then we start to put things in place for myself to how I can walk forward from that. And Sangatji, the moment we start making that effort, the moment we start putting things in place to walk forward, and Sangatji, then what does Satguruji say? Then the question is, will I be forgiven? Satguruji says, will you be forgiven? This is Pichale Augan Bakshale. This is your past sins will be forgiven. Pichale Augan Bakshale Prabh Age Marg Pave. Prabh Age Marg Pave. Sangatji, what that means is that when I start walking forward and I take those righteous actions, when I start putting things in place, okay, so if at the moment I'm struggling, so I'm not going to put myself in that situation. So I'm going to maybe take that step back from speaking to that certain person because I now became become a bit flirty or become a little bit like this with them. So to strengthen myself, I might need to take a step back for this moment. And Satguru Ji Paji is saying, you're now putting something in place. You're now starting to walk forward. So Sadhguru Ji Pachi say that Jaisa Balak Pai Subai, this is just like an innocent child, Lak Aparad Kamave, commits hundreds of thousands of mistakes. This says that Kar Upades, then the Guru gives you the teaching, Kar Upades Chidke Bahupanti, the Guru tells us off, sorry, Maaf Karna, gives us the Jugatiyan, Dek Paraiya Changiyan, there's the Jugati, this is what you need to start doing. That you look at them, the moment your mind starts to fall and drop, as you're looking at them, what do? That you're finding it difficult at the moment, you start visualizing your own mother. You train yourself first, and when you go out there in that big wide world, you've trained yourself that now, if that does happen to me, I'll tell you my own personal journey, Sangadaji, because it's always easier to relate. When I first wanted to take these steps because remember, Sangataji, there's a time when we think that this is okay. To somebody, this isn't even a sin, this isn't even a mistake. For somebody, that's just normal. But for those for them that live within the Guru's hukam, and they're trying to live up to the Guru's word, so then coming from out of that lifestyle, then you want to start living the Gurmat way. And what I did myself was that I would actually, when I would notice somebody's beauty, and because that habit's there, and what I started doing is I would actually say out loud, if I was driving, I would actually say, "E teri maa vargiya, e teri bhaian vargiya, teri bhaian jaisi hai. She's just like your sister." And then I would say to myself, "E teri bhaian ya, e teri mata ya, e teri tii ya. This is your daughter, this is your mother, this is your sister." And as your brain starts to then, it starts to adapt to that new way, and you start to create those neural paths in your brain now. And then just like Pachi says, kar karna likh la jao, it's doing that again and again. And then eventually it becomes your sabah, that gurma ka milya subah. It becomes natural. Then you see, then you look, and then it is, you only see, oh, meri maa hai, meri bhain vangu, meri tii vangu, this is just like my mother, this is just, and then it starts happening. So we've got to take as we start to take those practical steps, how big is Guruji's forgiveness? How great is Guru Sahib is Waheguruji's heart? Satguruji Guru Gobind Singh Ji Pachi tell us this every day in Sri Jap Sahib. Jap Sahib say to us that Namastang Udare, Namastang Apare. They're saying that Waheguruji is Namastang Udare. Udare means Vishal Dilwala. Somebody with a huge heart. Somebody that is so forgiving and is so caring. That is Udare. Inna Udar means when you save somebody. That Waheguruji is that one that saves. And what it means then, when we look at the word internally, it actually means somebody with a huge jida delbo vadda hove. Waheguruji's forgiveness is so huge, Sangat ji. That's why Pachi je lakh aparad kamave, even if we make 100,000 mistakes. And then Sangat ji, but it doesn't mean that we play a game with Waheguru and we can't fool Waheguru. We can't say, Chal, I'm going to make this mistake and it's okay now that Waheguru is going to forgive me anyway, that I'll just go and make that mistake again. Sangat ji, remember, Waheguru ji's kat ke antar ki janat phale bure ki peer pachanat, that Waheguru ji knows the hearts of everyone. Pala, if somebody's good or somebody's bad, Waheguru ji knows everybody's thoughts and intentions. The forgiveness comes in, it flows in at that point when that intention is there and we're actually taking the steps. Remember, Sangat ji, the intention could be good, but we're still continue to make that mistake. Remember, it's very simple. If we continue to make that mistake, remember that's the karma we're creating. That's the action we're doing. and then that's what is going to fold out from that as well. So the cause and effect will be accordingly to the action we're doing. So even though we might have good intentions, but if we do something that's wrong, for example, remember, it's still going to fold out. The reaction is still going to be accordingly to the action that we do. So the bakshish, Sadhguru ji Paat ji say, ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਨਮਸਤੰ ਉਦਾਰੇ ਬਹੁਤ ਵਿਸ਼ਾਲ ਦਿਲ ਵਾਲੇ ਨੇ ਸਾਡੇ Satguru ji, our Guru Sahib ji and Vaheguru ji. And Namastang, how big is their heart? Namastang apare, it's got no limit, it's that big. It means it, sometimes we think, no, but what I did was it was really crazy. And what I did was, but I killed someone. I actually did adultery. I cheated on my wife. I cheated on my husband. I did this. I did that. Whatever it is, Sangat ji. Sadhguru ji's heart is so big that if Guru Nanak Dev Ji Paat Ji can forgive a cannibal, Gauda Rakesh, if Guru Nanak Dev Ji Paat Ji could forgive Sajjan Thug, but when did Guru Nanak Dev Ji Paat Ji forgive them? When they surrendered, and when this is Nanak Gareeb Tahe Paya Dware, when they actually fell, and then they said that that's it, now I surrender and I take these steps to go for. What did Sajjan Thug do? Who's a murderer? He would throw people down the well. But what did Sajjan Thug do for Guru Nanak Dev Ji Paat Ji forgiveness to flow in? He took that step forward, Pyareo, and then what he did was he actually started to use all his wealth to give food to those that didn't have the money to get food. They were living in so much poverty that they lived in hunger. And he then distributed his wealth to those that were in need. Sangaji, and when he did that action, when Guru Nanak Dev Ji saw that he's taking that step forward, the action is there to walk away from his past negative actions. And then Pachi says that Pichale Ogana Bakshale Prabha Age Marg Pave. Because Baksh is then when Age, when we walk forward, then the Baksh comes, Sangaji. So Paatji talks about reflection. Guilt will kill us. Reflection will actually help us to walk forward. And it doesn't mean just because we're not feeling guilty that it's okay to just do whatever. Sometimes we just think, well, then won't it be that we just won't feel anything if we're not going to go down that. Remember, like I said, as long as we're reflecting, that is powerful in itself. That's why Paatji says that Khoj, he said, search dil, you own inside. Khoj dil har roz, every day. If we do that na, then na fir, then pareshani mahe, within our mind, then that pareshani, that anxiety won't come again and again. Because if we start to feel guilty and we start living in that way, what will happen is then we'll start to worry. Oh my God, what is such and such thinking now? What is my Guru? Oh, this is crap. I've done this, I've said this. What's going to happen? What's happening now? Chinta pavan man pareo hamara. Pash is saying now my mind is going into this whirlpool of anxiety. It's very dangerous because guilt over time can turn into depression, can turn into long-term chronic anxiety that becomes then a mental health issue. So we've got to be very careful, and we shouldn't be trying to instill guilt inside anybody as well. I always say to Sangat, don't ever try and inspire someone towards Sikhi by putting guilt inside of them. Inspire them, but don't put guilt inside of them. So Sangat ji, sometimes we make these commitments or we're not able to live up to them and fulfill them. And sometimes what it is, we make unrealistic goals. So it's trying to be real with ourselves as well, is building ourself up to something. Especially, again, myself, that is somebody that has suffered with mental health. I find that with myself, and when I speak to others as well that have suffered in some form of way, we tend to make a lot of promises that aren't very realistic. And sometimes because we don't know when that mind's going to fall back into that low mood, we're not actually able to fulfill what we said we're going to do. So we're not always able to fulfill that task that we said we will do. And sometimes because somebody might start going through a spout of anxiety which won't allow us to carry out that task as well. So Sangaji, it's okay. It's being realistic with where we are, our state of mind. And if we're not able to fulfill it as well, remember, no beating. It's a light, it's a little tap, it's a rain, it's just reflection. It's okay. I understand that I do go through bouts of anxiety. Okay, I have got this tendency, or I just might have this habit. I don't think when I speak, and I'll just say to everyone, yeah, yes, I'll do it, yes, become the yes man. Yeah, we've got to be careful of that. That can become quite a bad habit that gets us into a lot of trouble. So it's about being more conscious as well. My books always said to me, they said, "Bolan to pehla sochna hai." Always think before you're about to speak. Especially they said when you sit on a stage, think about each word very carefully. Don't just blab and don't just blurt your words out. So it's being careful as well what we do commit to, but at the same time, if we're not able to live up to that commitment, remembering that Guru Sahib Ji is forgiving, and they will. Remember, we've gone through Gurbani. Gurbani said that Waheguru Ji will, they'll see that effort, or then just being realistic, saying, actually, I'm not able to do that, and that's okay, you know. And there's a lot of people maybe feeling like that now, in what's going on, is wanting to help in some form of way, but we might not all be able to help because we might have some sort of symptoms ourselves, or we're not allowed to be outside. So for some people, helping at this time could be just staying at home, and staying at home and not spreading, even if it's a common cold, even if it might be the actual coronavirus itself, or it might be somebody might be suffering with a flu, which isn't the actual coronavirus. But the best thing we could do by helping is to actually stay at home. And Sangaji, there's been an overwhelming response from that request from the government that the NHS needs volunteers. And there's been 600,000 people that have signed up as well for that. And there's they requested 250,000. Sangaji, one thing I do want to point out is we've definitely got to recognize the work that is being done by the NHS staff at the moment. From those that are just the care workers, that normally their job is to wash the patient and whatever other tasks that their job requires them to carry out, but they're going above and beyond. There's staff that are doing way more than their hours at the moment, and this is me speaking to somebody from the NHS, an actual doctor, and saying yes, that the patients have started to now roll in, especially towards London, those that are potentially suffering with the coronavirus. And Sangaji, there's many ways that we could help. Remember, if you sign up to be a volunteer, you might be just helping by taking calls and calling in on people to make sure that they're okay, those that are self-isolating, those that are at home. It might be that you are actually just delivering or taking something from a hospital to another place. But Sangaji, but if we've said we were going to do something and we're not able to do it, it's not about feeling guilty. It's about just going through those steps, reflecting, being realistic with myself, what I can carry out at the moment, because emotions are high and we might act impulsively at the moment but not actually be able to carry out, because some of these jobs going in there, for some people, the task, the whatever they volunteer in might be actually risking their lives. So there's one thing that we can all do that is quite easy, and it is quite of a realistic goal. And again, if you're not able to do it, there's no guilt involved. It's okay. And that one thing is, I've put a link up on the live feed on our Facebook, and maybe I can put that link in our YouTube description as well, to sign a petition, because there is one thing that the NHS staff are definitely struggling with, and that is they've not got the appropriate equipment to protect themselves whilst they're on the front line risking their lives. Sangat ji, I've been told firsthand that the masks that some of them that they're using at the moment are so tight that it's marking their faces and almost making them suffocate. And Sangat ji, the other thing is that they've said that this doctor that I've just spoke to has had pictures sent through by the staff, NHS staff, that some of these masks are actually out of date. So Sangat ji, they need to be protected. This way we can all help. And one step that we can take, like I said, but if we're not, because this is our topic today, it's not about feeling guilty, it's just being realistic, something that we can carry out or we can't carry out. And even if we think we did and we're not able to, that's okay. We'll start fresh again. If we're not able to do anything, like I said, at the moment, just staying at home, you're helping so many people. Is because we don't know if we're carrying any form of virus or disease, and we could be spreading that. So in whichever way we do take part, this is literally that. For me, I was thinking, this is like Jo to prem khelan ka chao, sir tar tali gali meri ao. This is literally the game of love. Putting our head on the palm of our hand. And myself as well, I really wanted to sign up as a volunteer as well, but because I've been coughing and I've had many symptoms, because I'm feeling a lot better today, I've signed up as well, because I read the list that we can help in so many different ways. But Sangat ji, again, I self-reflect as well. Sometimes I start feeling guilty, I'm not doing this, I'm not doing that. But then I remind myself of the seva that Guru Sahib's given me, is to be able to try and understand Bani to whatever extent and sit here and actually deliver it to the Sangat, and hopefully filling the Sangat's mind with more positivity and giving them that hope to go forward in a positive way and not feeling guilty about anything, and changing that guilt into positive self-reflection and giving ourselves realistic goals and taking realistic steps. And even if we do take a big leap, it's not feeling guilty when we're not able to reach that, and always remembering Guru Sahib Ji's heart is huge and will help us. And again, my beinti to everybody, Sangat ji, is to sign that petition, which will help for the government to get better equipment for our NHS staff, and in whichever way we can be positive and actually be of help. So Sangat ji, put my hands together, ask for forgiveness. Sare Fateh Balo. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.